Hello, everybody, and welcome to DM Writer's Room, a show where we demystify the DMing, GMing, and in this case, setting creation process. We are going to talk a little bit about the homebrew that we have been working on in this show, but first, I have to just take a small moment to ask Spencer, what sort of uh, um, hostile group has kidnapped you and locked you away for ransom?
They're an anti-beard group. They did make me shave my face as well.
Wondering.
So, yeah, the lack of light is sort of helping in that regard. So shout out to that anti-beard group.
Love that. They are trying to get Michael and I's locations so that they can also force us to shave, but Spencer's holding strong.
Only enough. Once a year, I do have to shave my beard, and I hate it every time.
It's the same group. Same group.
Same group. They get you. They haven't found me yet. I'm wily out here. It's because I keep it stubble. It keeps them from being too tempted to come after me. So for those of you who missed our previous stream, we are working on a D100 horror / kind of dark comedy setting. We love the energy of, your Call of Cthulhu's, your Delta Greens, your other kind of spooktacular adventures, but there is a, dare I say, sort of cringy self-importance that tends to kind of leach in that we weren't as fond of. And so trying to lean on our sort of larger scheme, if you've been watching this show or our other shows for long enough, I think you probably are getting a sense for the kind of aesthetic that we like, and it's a little distinct. So we've been sort of pushing in that direction. Last time we talked a lot about a couple sections of the world and started to flesh out the things around it. We started with the tower, the genesis of this entire setting, an idea that Spencer came up with when we were writing a modern Call of Cthulhu adventure. The tower is a extra-national paramilitary group that finds its origins in the creation of the literal historical Tower of Babel. They are incapable of understanding, speaking, or learning any language other than the strange one that they gained in this strange, far-sequestered past. They can be contacted and track down threats, and if you start to research them even casually, they will first try to guide you off the mark. And shortly after, what I have written in our rough draft copy is, if you keep digging, however, you may wake up to find your home filled with smoke, your windows sealed from the outside. We have named our sort of equivalent of sanity ignorance, because the term sanity is extremely loaded in a larger cultural context. And we wanted to sort of pay homage to an idea that we came up with in Galaxy Blocker, a stream from a million years ago, which is the idea that the cultists in that setting don't sort of... Oh, whoops. We're having a small technical difficulty. There we go. Don't lose any parts of themselves. They begin to learn the truth of the universe. They are correct in what they are learning, and so we've renamed it ignorance. You are trying desperately to cling to your ignorance as hard as you can in the world of this setting we have yet to name. Ignorance is currency. In fact, the subtitle is Ignorance is Bliss. You are trying to hold on to it as long as you possibly can. We've decided we want there to be some sort of solid state breaking points in a way that other games usually tend to have sliding breaking points that sort of follow you. We liked better the idea that we would have sort of stand-in positions. Now that does suggest that it is very hard in our world to get ignorance back, which I kind of like. In most other settings, you can attend therapy, you can deflect onto bonds, you can do a lot of things to sort of push off some of the damage that you've received mentally. It sounds like thus far in the world of what I will tentatively call the tower, you kind of can't. Once that bottle has been uncorked, that's pretty much gone, which makes a lot of sense given some of what we know about the setting. Magic in the setting, we've decided, is based around these eldritch and terrible secrets. When you learn a secret, you roll to see how much ignorance you lose, and you roll to see how juiced that secret is. Is it a great and powerful thing that you can harness? Or have you accidentally kind of pulled a dud and maybe cost yourself a lot in order to gain it? You work with whatever your game master, we have yet to name the title, you work with your game master to create a sort of a spell, title is secret, that is kind of relevant to whatever the sort of topic at hand is. We have some secret sort of categories being things like a secret related to fire, to electricity, to the sky. giving a broad category lets you come up with your own magical secret and sort of set a range of successes and failures. Another thing we need to talk about sometime in the next 3 months that we spend working on this. Who knows if it'll be that long. We decided that there is a group called the Library that manages and collects these secrets, and that there are what we call brokers, which is like a member of the library who is an idiot, who sells their secrets for money and lives... we had a good sentence here too. Countless tragic incidents trace back not to foul cults and evil plans, but instead to dangerous spells being sold off to fund vacations and penthouse suites. The only saving grace is that brokers, blissfully, do not live very long. It's sort of the end of our context on them. And then finally, the Coven, which all we knew is we wanted one, and that it would be very cool if there was a group that insisted that using these ancient methods was the best way to communicate safely. Are they right? Are they wrong? Who can say? Certainly not us. And then finally, a couple of real club bangers came in right there at the end when we came up with Hunt, the Homeland Unit of Non-Existential Threats. This is the United States' answer to what we are sort of soft calling the Outsiders until we can name them. Hunt specifically handles non-exist threats that will not destroy humanity. For that, there are other more important organizations to tie into. There are 3 subsections within Hunt, at least 3. Cobb, the Center of Obstructive Bureaucracy, who, interferes with traffic, gets roads shut down, gets subway cars shut down, all kinds of terrible things that interrupt your day to keep you from losing your ignorance. Pixie, the Periphery Intelligence and Xenological Investigation Ensemble, who wipe your mind, snip out memories, and are seen only in the dreams you have after the fact of what happened. And then one named by a fan in the comments, Studs, the Surreptitious Terrestrial Undercover Department. These are the actual put on a costume, go down into the subway, and shoot the werewolf that is on 3rd Street. These are the people that actually need to go and get things done. That's what we have so far. We have a couple of questions sort of left up in the open, and it's up to us what ones we want to get to today. So I'm going to kick us off just by bringing up a few big empty spaces that I see. So number 1, in all of these kinds of games, at some point you need to start talking a little bit about mechanics and about your character. So for instance, what are our attributes? Is it strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma? Do we have anything sort of swapped out for something else? Does one of those, usually one of those sort of sets, your default ignorance or sanity or whatever you want to call it in your game? That's something for us to think about. Number 2, we need to name our outsiders. We need to talk a little bit about what these threats are. Do we want to really lean into the Lovecraft of it all? Are these mythos creatures? I'll be honest, I think we should probably come up with something else. But that is always an option. And then just one last thing before we carry on. And then finally, we have a couple of sort of mechanical questions around secrets and around some of these other groups that we could certainly spend some time on. Michael, would you raise your hand about?
I have an idea for a DM name.
Sure.
2 actually. Ascended or Ascendant or Truth Speaker. They're the only person that knows everything that's going on. They know all the secrets.
Interesting.
You know what's really funny about Ascendant? Is if it was the Ascendant one, it would be AO. Which is a riff off of the last short we uploaded, which, by the way, everybody go check out our shorts on YouTube.
New shorts on.
I
think the Ascendant is fun.
The Ascendant is very good. I was going to say, the only thing I like a lot about the Truth Seeker is, those are both good. They are both a tad long in the tooth, and the Truth Seeker could be shortened to the Seeker. And I think the Seeker has a nice, solid, clarion ring to it. There's not too much extra sort of going around in the background there. Although the Ascendant could be a little funny. I would just feel a little weird being like, hey, Ascendant.
True. Seeker.
Who wants to take
Seeker's
Ascendant
fun.
on this one? It's just, I don't know, there's a power dynamic in there. Like, it's a little
There
odd.
is. But it's also unique.
It's very true.
True.
Okay.
I'm happy with both.
So, do any of those paths for us to begin to walk down today intrigue any of us as we start to sort of noodle out this here D100 horror system that we are kind of taking a look at. Assuming we're keeping with D100, I assume we are, just because I like D100 games. I actually watched, somebody explained to me, I saw in a video, unfortunately I can't remember what the video was, why D100 systems feel kind of good. When you roll dice for D100, you roll, and if the number is under your skill, you succeed, and if it is over, you fail, usually. And the skill number is what changes. What feels good about that is you don't have to do any math. You roll the die, and the second the die stops moving, you know if you succeeded or failed right away. It takes out that moment of like, wait, I've got a +4. What was the DC again? Which also means that if you're playing at a table with a bunch of friends and you're rolling in front of sort of everybody, which I think is always the best way to play if you can, everybody knows if you've succeeded or failed instantly. You can say, I need to get below a 74 and roll the dice. Instead of going,
anti-cheating.
His AC's a 17. Okay, roll a d20. It's a 14. Everybody looks at you. You're like, I have a +3. And like, it's a little number crunching.
Yay!
Moment. Yeah. It sort of delays the gratification. Maybe a little too much. But anywho, what are we leaning in? Any directions here we want to take?
D100, I would like to figure out attributes, not skills necessarily, because that list can get long as hell in D100.
Certainly can, yeah.
So let's think about attributes, yeah. Because my first thought is knowledge would be 1 instead of like wisdom or intelligence. It's just knowledge.
Let me mess up my lighting horribly to pull out a couple of. Let me just grab a. We having fun yet? So that I can pull up an example of how many traits usually you're working with in the D100 horse system. So let's jump off from something that we know we are sort of in concert with here, right? So if I'm taking a look at like your Call of Cthulhu's stats, James has just suggested Casper, courage, agility, susceptibility, pride, energy, and reality. James, I just want to know how you came up with that so fast.
Just killing with that.
So
were you cooking on that one while we were away for the last week?
James has a composition notebook next to his bedside table. Characteristics in Call of Cthulhu are strength, constitution, dexterity, intelligence, size, power, aptitude? I don't know what appearance. Appearance. And education. Oh, yes. One of the key stats in Call of Cthulhu is, are you hot? What's going on? Talk to me. Yeah. All right. So we've got sort of strength, con, dex, intelligence, size, power, appearance, and education. I don't know if any system walks particularly far off from that. There's only one other one that I can really think to check. Wow, Discord keeps doing this funky thing today that I love that it's doing, where the whole screen goes gray, and all I need to do is sort of click it off of full screen and back to full screen. But that is just enough to be super annoying.
Every once in a while that happens. I don't know what causes it. It just be.
Something.
Now, I gotta say, one thing from James that I really like is courage. The idea of being like, you're about to do something so crazy and terrifying, you're encountering this unknowable horror. Roll courage to make sure you can do the thing you want to do is fun.
Only if we can roll knowledge also, and you roll very bad and you're stupid.
I can't be frightened. That could be anything out there.
I played a character 100 years ago in the board game Arkham Horror that I was absolutely in love with. He survived the entire game nearly untouched by the occult because he was so stupid that whenever I would roll to see if he would internalize what was going on, he never could. And so I believe that's where, oh man, that dog is sick. I think that's where that comes from.
Something's wrong with that dog.
Yeah, I spent the entire night going, this dog is sick. Like, he's shooting at, like, Dark Young of Yanog, just convinced that it was some more mundane, less outsidery nonsense. Okay,
But yeah, I like courage as a stat.
Courage
That
is
definitely
sick.
fits. I like knowledge too, instead of a wisdom, intelligence.
Sure. So I can give you kind of an example of what has happened with the two sort of major D100 horror settings here. So In Call of Cthulhu, like I said, you have strength, con, dexterity, intelligence, power, appearance, size, and education. Power is the equivalent of your sort of mental fortitude. Size and strength are very closely tied together. Size is literally how big you are, and it's pretty closely connected to just how strong you are. And education and intelligence are very closely tied. In Delta Green, they folded intelligence and education into each other, and they folded strength and size into each other, and they replaced appearance with charisma. Now, we had some stuff that we said we wanted to do here, so we said that we like the idea that one of these is courage. I like that. I don't know if I would necessarily want this to be true no matter what. I do kind of like the idea that if we could steal, of all things, something from like Honey Heist for our D100 Hoarder, I love opposing attributes, right? They don't happen a lot, right? Strength and dexterity aren't opposed. We just don't associate them with each other. I kind of like the idea that courage and intelligence seem opposed to one another, right? Like there's an element of direct opposition there that I think is fun. I'm not saying we have to do that. I'm just saying that's something I enjoy about it. And then you guys said another one that you were getting a kick out of. Knowledge instead of intelligence. Yeah, I mean, intelligence as a stat certainly has a little bit of a gross, like...
It's so specific.
How intelligent are you at birth? It has like a weirdly, like, what's the shape of your skull? It's sort of a weird energy to being like, roll for intelligence versus roll for...
And I like having it knowledge. I like having it be knowledge, because knowledge can come from so many places. It's like, oh, my guy's a street thug, but his knowledge is really high, because he can get you in and out of any situation. Like, he can navigate the town, like all that. He's not book smart.
He has insane street smarts.
What it tells me is that we're going to have a lot of, like, parent attribute, child attributes. We're going to have a lot of, like, knowledge blah, knowledge blah, knowledge blah, knowledge blah, which is going to be a real big departure from most D100 Horror. If we derive a lot of our attributes that way, we're getting into some real shenanigans. I'm talking about derived attributes. Is everybody getting excited in the audience? So courage, now I do want to say something. I'm looking at our list, and I'm seeing us moving in a direction that I'm not opposed to. We have begun to write a very knightly courage, knowledge. That's not intelligence and strength.
So true.
That's certainly not like willpower and intelligence, right? That's like courage, knowledge. So is that an energy?
Noblesse.
And we do have the Knights of
I was about to say, we're sort of filling out a little bit of a world here. I'm seeing like the Coven and the Tower and knowledge and courage and secrets is what we call our magic. I'm seeing like a very fantastical set dressing on this kind of horrifying world that I'm kind of into. I certainly don't dislike. It might inform what we call our investigators, right? We are investigators, or often. I'm curious if is it fun or is it just cheesy to like give our characters a name that is somewhat like tied to chivalry and this idea of like the questing hero. I think you would kind of have to romanticize your own existence a little bit.
Yeah, they're guardians.
One of my favorite examples of this comes from history. If you when Shakespeare writes a speech that a medieval general delivers to his people, it's always like, and today we may die, but we die protecting our people. If you look up any accounts of medieval speeches and like early like pre-Renaissance speeches, they are all like, we are titans of death, none of us can be killed, we will slaughter. Like, none of them have any of that like, oh no, we might lose. So I do think there is something funny to be like, in order to go, I can fight Nyarlathotep and save the world, do you have to have a little bit of, oh, I can't be killed by mortal weapons in you somewhere? Like, is that the default?
Yeah. I think that makes sense, especially because we're going pulpy. Like, if we were going horror, no, of course not. You want to be an accountant named Jim that's going to get killed. We're going pulpy. You got it. It's like being an adventurer in Dungeons and Dragons. You're not normal. You aren't.
The problem for me is now here's what I will say. Counterpoint, I would love to play a red shirt accountant named Jim and need to fill out his courage stat. I would love to play an idiot who dies in the first session who has a courage of 85 and a constitution of 20 and dies from like
I've got it.
coughing baby versus hydrogen bomb kind of thing. Pretty powerful. Okay, so if courage is is courage like our willpower?
Yeah, courage is your stick-to-itiveness, your foolhardy nature. Wink.
Wink. And then knowledge are sort of intelligence. If we're trying to give sort of courtly names, then my dexterity replacement would be alacrity.
Yeah.
And what's really nice about this is if after we're done with this wonderful stream that our fabulous chat is getting to have their input on, we decide that this is a bad idea, we can just change it. And that's we mainly try to demystify the sort of world building and prep process here. Hey guys, if you don't like it like a day after you came up with it, throw it out. Do something else. No one knows. The world building police aren't going to shatter through the window if the emperor that you named like 20 sessions ago, if you're like, I don't really get that anymore. I got kind of a different image for them now. You can just delete what you did, especially if it hasn't come up yet.
Even if it has come up, your players probably forgot the specifics. You can do it.
They probably don't know. And if they ask too many questions, you can be like, there was a coup. There was a coup.
Yeah, be like, oh, I don't know. And then
you
go home that night and you write stuff out.
Do you remember when the guard garrison that you went to last time had nobody in it? I guess they were somewhere else. You can like totally run the circle around them and have a fine time there. So we've got courage, knowledge, alacrity. So what we have left is Constitution might stay Constitution. I don't know if I have a problem with Constitution. The only other thing if we wanted to get real brainy, renaming Constitution humor is what I would do. If we really wanted to full send,
it would be so confusing for people. It's great. Most people would be like,
humor, like funniness, and it would be a bridge that you'd have to gap there. A gap you'd have to bridge. Michael, what were you saying?
I had an idea for charisma.
Yeah.
Individuality.
Mine was gonna be glamour for charisma. So we've got some options.
For our current bit, glamour is getting me a little more. Just a smidge. Fair. I want to use... I like the idea that somewhere on our character sheet is how strong of a sense of self do you have. I like the idea that individuality goes somewhere as like... I think about the King in Yellow, right? I think about Far Carcosa. And the thought that good gravy, this has happened 50 times. And the thought that if you read this play, your sort of mental self starts to be eroded. I like the idea. I know some people who would be undisturbed by that. Like, I know some people where I'm like, if they were possessed by a ghost, the ghost would not take over. The ghost would just be stuck in there.
Let me out!
Yeah. I could see that being under our willpower. Not willpower. What do we use for courage? I could see that being under courage.
Is glamour spelled how I think it is? Did you GLAMOUR us? Or are you?
Yeah,
all right, there you go. There you go.
You.
And then let me jot down individuality so we don't forget it.
Now, I'm going to go back to James's comment. With individuality, there's pride, which kind of goes insane with our nightly rendition.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, I don't necessarily think I want to do... There's sort of the bond system that Delta Green has, right? Where you can kind of deflect off onto, people that are sort of off screen. And I like that. But something we accidentally made a lot of reference to last time is this thought that your character has what are essentially like vices. They're sort of clear avenues, right? They might be kind of addicted to knowledge. They might be like an itinerant gambler. They might be very violent. I kind of like the idea of there being sort of vices that you can, instead of losing grip on reality, like take on these negative traits. So rather than the usual sort of sanity-based system where it's like, oh, you passed a threshold, pick a negative character trait. I like the idea of you don't want to go to the next level, pick a negative character trait to not go. And pride being one of the sort of like vices that you can buy your way into, I think would be very funny. To have like some sliding scales of like pride and a bunch of others.
Narcissism.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the only one we have left then, actually we have a couple. So we have strength. Might, I think, is our sort of most fantastical equivalent, right?
Yeah. I'm going to hit up synonyms really quick.
Go for it.
Again, we have given this advice so many times. If you're DMing and you don't have a thesaurus website up, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're doing. That's thing number one. That's right up there with it's fantasy name generator, it's a thesaurus, and it's the rule book for whatever game you're playing.
There's force, power, vigor, brawn, sinew.
Brawn, might, vigor and constitution are a little close for my taste.
Yeah.
Sinew is the interesting one, but
there's dominance, toughness, robustness, ferocity, manful.
Is there one of these you like better than brawn or might?
No, I think that brawn is cool.
We're anti-might in this house?
Actually, no, might's cooler. Might's cooler.
yeah.
It's more knightly.
Okay. So this D100 horror system's 6 stats are might, constitution, alacrity, knowledge, courage, and glamour. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's sick.
It's pretty
That's
good.
That's good. Is there anything else we might want? Do we want a 7th stat or no?
Oh, that's true. We do have the sort of like size and education we can fold in with other things, but we could certainly add some. I would say if I was going to add some, I would add 2. I would go from 6 to 8 if we could. So let's start with what we don't think is covered. So here's what we have. We have physical strength and physical speed. We have like overall healthiness, and then courage, which isn't quite the same thing as like willpower, manifestation, the ability to use wicked magics with a Y in it, right? So that's an empty space I see.
I was gonna say very similar. I could see removing courage and putting will in, and then having courage as one of the subcategories. Courage, sense of self, etc. on that subcat list. And yeah, when you use magic, it's going to burn some of your will. Some of your sense of self is going to go away. Your courage is going to go.
So our system's really... So it sounds like we're moving in a very derived attributes mode, right? Where you have big attributes that boil down to your smaller ones. So normally, so I can keep talking out the system here, when you're playing D100 systems, normally everything starts with like 5 or 10 in it. And then you can buy points. It sounds like in our idea here, you would sort of populate those baselines with derived attributes, kind of filling all of them, with the thought that you have this sort of like background level of knowledge, and then add on to it from there. That will make for much more powerful characters, right? That is one of the reasons they don't do that in other systems. So we could sort of, whether or not, again, we can sort of adjust this as we continue, whether or not that is something that we like.
Off rip, I like it.
It's certainly very interesting. I think it's cool. And it's also a little bit of a bias. I've never played a D100 horror game that didn't get a little bit I swing a baseball bat at the evil creature. I've just never, and I've watched a fair bit of like online Let's Plays of it. I've never seen a game where it doesn't inevitably turn into like, well, pip pip cheerio boys, and they grab their M1 Garand and start shooting out of windows. Like, I don't know, it's just always what happens. It's kind of inevitable, right?
I think that it's an issue with the way we play TTRPGs, which is to say you do it to have fun with your friends, and that fun a lot of the times is like, ooh, let's be scared. you can't be in a perpetual state of fright over the course of 6 months of playing the same characters with your friends. It's why every D&D campaign veers to goofs, and every horror system veers to action-y combat. I just don't think that it really works when you get down to the brass tacks on it. That's my personal take. That's a hot take for, I think, a vast majority of the TTRPG community. But I do stand by it.
I think in order for a game to not devolve into I'm having a lot of fun with my friends, and if we all need to like awkwardly stay in character to keep the vibe going, we aren't having fun. I think the only people that aren't doing that are people who are actual play online,
making money.
Yeah, that are trying to make content. And even then, I have only ever dabbled in the thought of being like, this should feel completely different from a home game and be very well, like taken care of. Even we inevitably are like, sorry, did you just say his name was Bonards? Like, it's kind of inevitably how it goes. All right.
Yeah.
So will, knowledge, alacrity, constitution, glamour, and might. And we like the idea that beneath will, somewhere, is courage.
Cool with that.
And I think that also under that, if we were going to have it on there, would be individuality.
Yep. Yep. I was thinking one, forethought. Do we think that'd be its own thing or underneath knowledge?
That'd be underneath knowledge.
Okay.
Like consideration. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's fun though. For the DM, for the characters to be like, I want to go down this route, and have like a wheel or woe thing where they're like, the DM says, okay, roll forethought. Is it actually a good idea? Because the character might not know, the player might not know, but to be like, roll for it. Let's see. That's really cool.
This is continuing to push me in this direction that we should have opposing skills. Because if forethought and courage are not fucking opposing skills,
It's true.
What are? So I'm starting to get a mental picture. If I'm thinking about what the character sheet for this game will look like, I'm starting to get a mental picture of intelligence and will on opposite sides of like the same, this like we have our rectangle of characteristics of like intelligence and will are opposed, courage and forethought are opposed, and so as you like gain points in one, you can't gain points in the other. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not totally sold on that being true.
Counterbalance.
There's something there I like.
It's a cool picture, and how I see it is it's almost like appearance sliders for character creation.
Oh
It
yeah.
sort of shifts. I kind of like the idea that for you to have nearly perfect forethought is for you to be like really always overthinking what to do next, and so naturally it will erode your courage versus somebody who is like extremely over the top courageous is going to struggle a lot to just think things through. Like that's going to be something they're constantly going to struggle with.
Yeah, I think we do some of that. Also, everyone say hello to Diabolus. Thank you for the follow.
Hello, Diabolus.
Shout out Diabolus, welcome.
So, if in this system we have will, knowledge, alacrity, constitution, glamour, and might, I think all that's fabulous. We can get into how we want each individual skill to work. I think we should probably kick that can down the road. That's going to be a long sode of us just on thesaurus.com. We might actually do that off air. And now the real question, though, is, so is knowledge... Do all secrets use knowledge, or do they use will? Do you get to pick a stat?
That's
I think
rough.
you could choose between two. I think most are knowledge, but there might be some that are will-based.
You brute force your way into knowledge is cool.
I like that. I do enjoy. I think maybe secrets you pick between which one you want to roll, and I think that will is safer, and knowledge is much more dangerous. But knowledge is more efficacious. If you roll with knowledge, it will work better, but the consequences to your ignorance will be much higher. If you roll will, it's just you trying to brute through the experience without thinking about it, right? Maybe you have to kind of roll both. Again, Sounds like they should be sort of opposed to one another
Sort of
on a
opposed,
character
maybe?
sheet. All right.
Potentially?
So the next thing I think we should really talk about before we start really running off with this, right? We're gonna get done with this portion of the world building, and then the next big thing we're gonna be doing is like coming up with evil gods and their servants, coming up with terrible creatures, tying them to folklore. We've got a lot of that coming down the line. So my first question up front, you gotta come up with some broad name for your otherworldly awfulness, right? You gotta. So in Call of Cthulhu, it's right the mythos. You have a mythos skill. You are exposed to the
So
mythos.
cool.
In Delta Green, it is the unnatural. It is those things that are outside of nature. We threw around about 1 million of them.
Yeah.
Have knowledge apply to a character's profession. James has just hit us with astrologist, ghost hunter, feng shui practitioner, aromatherapist, xenodokinologist, the study of the lore of hotels and inns, and phrenologist. And he's just going, wow, James, you had a lot of these on hand. Illusionist, cryptozoologist, esotericist, conspiracist. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, James. Having knowledge sort of tie to the profession of your individual character is fun. The fact that under knowledge, one of the options is just blank. And it's like, hey man, put whatever thing you do in there. I don't know your character.
all good.
Are you an accountant? Put accounting. Are you, whatever it is you do, put it in the box. You know about that. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Fun too if there were mostly. I think it'd be knowledge. I think there'd be a few professions that aren't like a spokesperson would be what Charisma one or a glamour, or you're like you are a security guard. You're a knight. Go with brawn.
Yeah, it would probably be like
That's done.
trained attributes will be on there somewhere, like just a blank with like 5 boxes that are like, these are the skills you have gained through your life. Tell me about what they are as part of character creation. So we did a bunch of different things to call our thing. We did bring up the thought of like the unnatural. We said a few times just the dark. We said the outsiders. We said outsider gods. We said elder ones. We said aliens. Alien presence, and a couple of other terms.
How about
So in the world-
void or voidlings?
The void I like. Voidlings I think is a little too camp. I like it for maybe the pulp version of this game, which is going to be really
Yeah.
pulp. Right? For those of you who don't know, Call of Cthulhu has pulp Cthulhu. So in the sort of mystical world here, that I'm increasingly in my head just calling the Tower, which I don't know if I want to keep that because it's also a faction that might be confusing. Where am I gesturing when I talk about the terrible horrors of our world, right? When you're talking about the mythos, you're pointing to a big arcane tone, right? You're not pointing to the sky, you're not pointing to the ocean. Maybe you're pointing to the ocean if you know too much. But you're pointing to like it's the mythos. It's in the dust. Ooh, like let me get the Necronomicon off the shelf. When I'm thinking about the unnatural, right? The unnatural is making me think of like fleshy things. Right, it's kind of gritty, it's grounded, and it's like those things that are not natural. It's pretty grounded, right? Where do we gesture to? Because you can definitely shoot the bads in our world, probably, but we do know that things are still hopeless, right? We aren't trying to pulpify this so much that you can. I don't think so. Maybe I should ask this question. I wasn't imagining that you could shoot Cthulhu with a missile. Right? As much as we're talking about the pulpy energy, I was not imagining full pulp, like I kill the serpent god and save America and they give me the Silver Medal of Honor, right? That's not what I'm imagining at all.
When we added studs, I started thinking about that a little bit.
Here's what I was thinking. We had talked about this a little bit last stream.
And then Spencer
The idea that they're-
the fingerprints of the organizations was something you brought up is a little more where I was
Yeah.
at.
So there are creatures that you encounter that you can shoot with a gun. Those are like American folklore creatures that tie back to the other thing that we're developing. There's a certain level where you get beyond being able to shoot it with a gun, and it gets to be like, you have to use magic to get rid of this thing. You need to find its simulacra and destroy it. And then you get beyond that, and that's the mythos creatures. the things that rule over the things you can shoot with guns, where you're like, this is not interactable.
I have an argument here for the pulp of it all that I think is going to help how I'm thinking. And feel free to veto me. I will just get very angry and be quiet the rest of the session. No, I'm kidding. I think what we're kind of naturally stepping onto, we have this idea, right, that the first Rubicon that you cross as you lose ignorance is bliss, is I'm empowered, I know about the world. I think that like energy, that like smirking we got this that both of you kind of put out just now, that like they're called studs. I think that's how it feels when you cross bliss. I think that's when you're like, and they can be killed. Like, I think there is a little bit of an 80s action hero. And I think that decays very quickly. I think it starts that way and then quickly devolves into like, all right, so the curse does still exist. I killed like the progenitor of it, but all those people are still gonna die. And this curse comes from some other thing, and it gives me a headache every time I look at the statue of it. Okay, like there's that devolvement, and as you keep going deeper, it gets worse and worse and worse and worse.
So here's what I'm thinking. We have milestones of groups, right? The librarians to me are like step 1. That's where you get the information to enter into bliss. You get something, you're in the librarian territory. Then after you've entered bliss, you're dealing with studs. Studs is where things are goofy, kind of fun, this is great. After you get past that, you're dealing with like the covens. This is real stuff with real ramifications that require huge work to get rid of. And then beyond that is where you enter tower territory. It's like, we're gonna nuke Chicago for this to be good. Like, that's the only option. We're gonna
do what we've gotta do, man.
That's it. And even that might not work.
Chicago or the world.
Yeah, and those levels of knowledge, I think, do line up with our organizations pretty well.
So, okay, so I'm gonna start walking through the list here then, and I think this is really gonna help at least me get an idea of where we're going. So we know we want 5 categories of ignorance, and so I think there should be 5 categories of the void, the dark, the unnatural, the outside. I think for number 1, I am going to write tentatively cryptid. Right?
Yeah.
There's a vampire. There's a chupacabra, right? It's light. We need to solve there's something in the mind. Like, it's very surface level. And once you deal with it, you feel that feeling of like, we did it, like we saved the day. I'm thinking about horror that we have done on this stream. Our first monster of the week on stream, Summer Camp Slasher, is coming to my mind, right? Your first thing is you're like, they're ghosts, we can get rid of them. If at the end of that adventure I alluded to the fact that, no, the thing that brought them back was those dark waters from the depth of the mountain, you'd have been like, sorry.
That's weird.
Roll the tape back for me.
Yeah.
What did you just say? Like, so if level 1 is cryptid, and that's where we're interacting with, like, you know, the librarians, right? We're dealing with characters that are like, if I can learn enough secrets, I can save the world. They believe truly somewhere that they've totally got this on lock. So my question then is the tower category 5 or category 4? Like, is category 5, no one treads these waters? This ocean is dark and unmapped. If you have found yourself here, it is too late. You are in Carcosa on the Lake of Hali. End it. Is that past?
I think it is so non-interactable that the knights founded to deal with it are just like, there's nothing. You can't kill the root of this tree. You can only cut the branches, and that's where they're at. They're cutting branches, not twigs.
Wait a minute. The thought that in the book of this, in the, whatever, like 60-page zine for the setting that we end up coming out with, the thought that what accompanies this is a tree, that the art is like a woodcut of a tree divided, and it's like, when you are among the leaves, you are full of hope and can do things. there is no weapon forged by man that can cut this tree down. The roots are untouchable, and like the thought that it's like leaves going down and then the roots wrap around like a heart at the bottom.
Yeah.
And it's like, and there's
It's like you're not
nothing
getting
you
there.
can do, but you could burn the tree down. In 20 years it will grow again. Like there is nothing to be done. Okay, cool. So
And
then
that's what the tower can do. The tree. They're cutting off sections of the tree, like the actual oak.
We're really setting up that when Rome fell, it's because of the tower in a way that I'm
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of into.
Yeah.
All right, so if tier 1 is cryptid, and tier 4 I'm not even going to put a name on yet because we'll just come up with some esoteric nonsense for that. What tier is the tower on?
I mean, they're gonna be
The
tier
town?
4, right?
Yeah,
they're
so
tier
like
4.
my question is,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get like, give me like a loose reference. I'm just having trouble
Oh,
coming up.
what they
Like,
okay,
yeah.
sorry.
cryptids is tier 1. Tier 2 would be something worse, right? Tier 2 is where I'm starting to get to like truly, I'm thinking like alien creatures. I'm thinking like the elder things, I think, oh God, get in the comments. The elder things from the Mountains of Madness, right? Pyramid-headed, barrel-bodied, six-winged creatures that dissect humans they encounter because they find them curious. Would be the next thing. Hard to deal with, but
Yeah.
it's got a body. It's
We could go-
physical, and it's like, I want to take over the world, and you're like, that's hard for me to understand, but it's not that hard. Like I know what you're going for, even if it's weird.
I'm cool with them being outsiders. Have first tier cryptids, then outsiders.
I think that what we'd have to do is it would, instead of being 5 tiers, it would just be fewer. First tier cryptids, second tier outsider, third tier is like world-ending issues. A cult has arisen that is summoning Cthulhu,
Yog.
and before Cthulhu appears, there's dozens of star spawn. It's like, now it's the tower. And then the next tier, tier 4, that doesn't really exist, would be Cthulhu's here. That's the vibe. So we're missing a couple, potentially.
I think we can fill them out. So, like, number 1 I'm thinking is, like, cryptid makes me think it has a body, and I understand it. Elder thing,
Yes.
it has a body.
I don't really get it.
I get it a little, but not much. And the other thing is, like, to give another Lovecraft example, there are, like, giant beetle creatures that are what comes after humanity on Earth. That's what they are. It's no, they're what comes after we all die. And we know we all die
Correct.
because the beetle things are here. And so you're like, oh, well, all right. It's like, I'm having a little trouble putting that one away, but I get it kind of.
Yeah.
Tier 3 for me would be like the Hounds of Tyndalos. Outsider creatures made of mirror shards that jump through the corners of houses to hunt people across time. You're like, I no longer really understand how it's alive, and I no longer understand where it's from. Like we're way outside, which is where I would put outsiders. You're like, wow, we have really jumped what I can understand. And then I think tier 4 would be world enders, would be existential threats to humanity, right? And that I think is where the tower is, because they deal with the existential big boy threats, right? We talked about an angel alien species that falls from the sky to terraform the world for who fucking knows what reason. It doesn't seem to be able to communicate back. Why did it do this? Why is it here? I don't know. How is it mind controlling people? Why does it look like an angel? That's when the tower goes, all right, this thing might destroy the world. We got it. And they just come in and kick
We're
other people
jumping
out.
in.
And then
Yeah.
tier 5 is wherever that thing came from.
Yeah.
And I'm
The parent.
not interested in the answer to that. That is not something I can deal with. That's like Azathoth, a living black hole that seeks to consume all reality and wheels an eternal dance in the sky. And you're like, nope, I actually can't deal with that even a little. I've got no ability to handle this.
Few ideas for that last tier.
Sure.
Unseens.
Yeah, Unseen,
Or
I was
we
going to say the
could-
Void, your previous one, was one that I thought was
Yeah.
kind of perfect, but go ahead.
Or we could have just like star @ sign hashtag just be like
It's just a line of windings.
Oh, that's so
yeah,
funny.
winding it.
That's so funny. Yeah, I think that for the last round, and you could like in text call them unknowable, whatever.
James,
what do we get?
Summarized outsider in a way I enjoy. The physical form has recognizable parts, wings, claws, etc. You've just never seen them in that order or way. It's like, it's like I recognize the pieces of what I'm looking at. I just didn't think that they would look like that when I saw them. That's bad.
So we've got like the unknowable wingdings, then we've got the void, and then below them we would have outsiders, and below them we would have cryptids. And that will be the span of names in my mind.
There'd be one more, but that's not a big.
Oh,
We don't
one more.
need to worry about that too much. So it would be like the unknown, the void, the outsiders. Something you can shoot a little more than an outsider, and then a cryptid. A cryptid is fully like mundane.
Yeah.
A cryptid
You
is
can
something
kill a werewolf with a gun.
you
You just got to shoot it enough times.
You could kill a cryptid and bring it to a news station, and nothing about your life would change. Nothing would happen. People would just go like, somebody found a freaky thing in the woods, and you'd go, great. And then on Reddit, people would post, what do you think this is? And somebody would be like, I have a degree. That looks like a... And they would say some deer with like a rare skin condition.
It's a muskrat.
And it would just go away. Yeah, that's the kind of thing
Half them say that's fake.
Yeah, AI.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
perfect.
So then we've got... And so there's another category in there kind of loosely. So then what's our broad... Do we have a broad name? Is it the top? Is it the unknown? Like, do we name
the very top or
unknown.
the...
what's the
Just
or for
they
this
would be
pyramid?
named
I know
after
the name
that
of the
top.
roots, the trunk, the branches, the leaves, and the heart at the center of it. What's the name of the tree?
Tree.
What
That's
do
a
we call
good
the
question.
What's this whole thing?
Yggdrasilians.
When people talk about what they are so afraid of, what do they call it? If we want to stick with the tree metaphor, right? Could we maybe they call it like the arbor is what they call this stuff? Because they're like, we can tell it's all connected. We don't know how.
I was thinking of Yggdrasil, and I said Yggdrasilians, which was fun, which is not, it's way too long. But then I thought the Yggdra is cool, but it's relying a little bit too much on a myth that exists.
No. But that is one of our bad guys. That's one of
Oh,
the
the Yggdra?
void is the Yggdra.
Yeah.
We could do Arbor Ignotus, Tree of Unknown.
That was on the source.
Oh, I'm not on
in-
the source. I'm on Latin.
There you go.
Hidden the Latin.
Yeah, maybe it is just like the unknown then is what we call the whole thing. It's like it's when you gesture to it, you say it's the unknown. It's things that we don't know
Yeah.
about and maybe can't know. You know what? I think the unknown works because, right, the top of the unknown is things we don't know about yet. The bottom is things we will never know. Things that cannot be known. To know them is to destroy yourself, right?
Yeah.
And what I like about that is it gives us this juxtaposition with the tower. I like the idea that the tower is definitely making themselves into one of these things. They have started to be, they know a language no one can understand, and they destroy and they attack anyone who learns too much about them. Right, they have sort of turned themselves into a facet of the unknown in order to combat it. And I like that. The thought that, it is those things you try not to know if you can manage it. Okay, cool. If Discord does this one more time, I'm gonna lose my mind. I'm getting frustrated. It just keeps going gray. It's really bothering me. All right, so that's pretty cool. So, I'm looking through here. Does anybody have any other thoughts on all of that? Anything that you suddenly are like, I don't actually think XYZ thing works?
I don't think so. I've got nothing.
So far, so good.
Okay. Then I only have one more immediate high-level world-building question that we need to answer. The top level of understanding, tier 1, I think is nothing. Right, is no understanding. So it's not bliss yet, right? It's just I saw something spooky in the woods, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where bliss goes because it feels nice and easy to deal with, and like the third time you see something scary, you're in bliss? So do we have like a little tiny sliver of safety at the top, and then
You get
category
one hit.
Yeah. I mean, I saw Goatman in
yeah.
the woods one time. I might never be the same. I certainly have, you think about it after. Okay, so it sounds to me like you have like a little buffer zone at the top, and then tier 1 is bliss. It's,
Yeah.
cool. There is magic in the world, and you can shoot it with a gun if it hates you. Great. And
Yep.
tier 5, the unknown, all the way at the bottom, is omniscient. Omni for short. You have truly come to understand how much the universe does not hate you but cares nothing for you. This is the end of your adventure. Do we have any ideas for what the 3 categories that are left are? Right? We brought up burden being number 2.
Yeah.
So bliss and then burden, which I do think works. So that only leaves us with 2 to name, unless burden wants to eventually kind of like Firehouse slide down to a lower level, which might happen. So bliss, we can do it. Burdened, that was a symptom, and I have found the illness, and I don't know what to do about it anymore, right? So let's talk about it in terms of our D100 horror adventure we came up with. I think this is a good example. Bliss is the weird cultist town people that try to lock you inside. You can deal with that. Burden is the dead thing that shambles around.
It is alive.
This next tier to me is, oh, those sick cultists have turned into like terrifying pursuit predators that chase you down if you try to flee. That's like the next one for me is like, wait, what? What do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then the tier after that is the first time you have the thought, where do these things come from and how many of them are there?
For that last one, or not last, but that one you just said, I see like dread or dreaded.
Oh, interesting. So bliss, burden, dread.
Yeah.
I like that. It's beyond burden. It's like, oh no.
Yeah, and then the other one I was thinking was like either stupefied or paralyzed.
I was thinking like to have given up. I was trying to think of the right word
hopeless.
for it. Yeah.
Broken.
Resigned.
Resigned.
I think we might have just finished that in 8 seconds.
Let's go.
Let me go down the list here. Blissful, burdened. So bliss, burden, dread, resigned, omnipotent.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
blissful. We can do this. Burdened. This is deeper than I thought it was. Dread. I am beginning to suspect that there is no solution. Resigned. And resigned is on the same tier as the tower. And that to me feels just right. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I understand why the tower exists now. I understand
We
why.
do have to bomb Chicago. Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
we do.
real now.
That's the level that, like, when Nick Fury shoots down the, like, plane with the nuke, he just wasn't resigned yet. He was still in dread. He just hadn't
Yeah.
embraced. Okay. So from there, that's our big unanswered questions answered. That's like our big world building level stuff. So next up, we got a little bit of time left. We got 24 minutes. We can start delving into some creatures, talking about the Yggdra, or we can zero in on the next group after the tower, which could be the library, it could be the coven, it could be, any of these other groups.
Let's do the monsters, the others, the unknown. I think that's fun. So we got the Yggdra, which is
So let's just start
angling
there.
towards nature. Yeah.
Yeah, let's just start there. So the Yggdra are... So what tier do they... So here's a question. Does a threat kind of exist on one tier, or do they all cascade from 5 down to 1?
I think they all cascade from 5 down to 1. You interact with Sasquatch, you're dealing with the Yggdra, you just don't know it. You'll get there.
So let's experiment with this a little bit. I think this is really cool. All right, so let me give myself a couple of lines on my notepad here. And let's be literal. So the Yggdra eventually lead you to Sasquatch. Eventually
Yeah.
lead you to this. So, you see Sasquatch outside, and wait a minute, Sasquatch's teeth is bloody, and no one has seen Frank's dad in 4 days. Oh no! Like, this is not just a fuzzy. Can I say something? We don't have to do this. It's like Sasquatch is blurry. Like it's this.
Yeah, that's funny.
It's this blurry proto-creation of the Yggdra that wanders the world. I don't know. That doesn't need to be true. It's a little too silly, but I like it.
What I like is twisting the initial cryptozoology myth into something more unknowable is good for the system. Instead of fighting Bigfoot, you're fighting an ape that's blurry. That's fucking weird. It's super weird, and it angles towards cosmic horror better. So I think we should do that. That makes sense.
So then my question is, how do you move through an encounter with the Yggdra, right? Because we don't need to perfectly flush it out. And I would love to, when we're making this, please, all D100 games like this, making monsters is the biggest pain in the ass in the universe. If we could find any way to simplify that, it would be fantastic. So I like the idea that we can say, here's an example of a threat from the Yggdra, and put Sasquatch at the bottom and like walk your way up the tiers. And then say, but you could start anywhere. You could start at any of the tiers with any idea you have, and then just spread up and down, and that will tell you about the threat that they should encounter. So how does the Sasquatch sort of continue up to what is eventually the Yggdra? And what the hell are the Yggdra? We don't need to know specifically, right? Now I will say, in like the mythos, even though you're never supposed to really interact with it, we know everything pretty much about like Azathoth. He's a giant sun-devouring black hole that has children, kind of descending down to the sort of base level. So what are the Yggdra, or what the hell is a Sasquatch, and what's above it? Like, where does it come from that can then come from something onwards and upwards?
I can kind of think of something at the top level.
Sure.
So it make it a little sandwich, sort of. And like when I think Sasquatch, I'm thinking like at the top level, it's something that like de-evolves everything in its path, brings it back to its base.
The nature is overtaking. That's fun. My next one would be like the enchanted wood. So it is an actual sect of the forest that is infected. So then that de-evolution thing leads into what makes the enchanted wood leads to the Sasquatch.
The enchanted wood is actually primeval, like it is Jurassic in nature. Is really good. Okay, so Sasquatch, and then we have Spencer's next step is like the enchanted wood, which I think is really great.
Yeah.
And then somewhere above that, below the Yggdra, we have like a force of pure devolution, something that like breaks down. So I like the idea that when I say that the Sasquatch is fuzzy, I don't mean it looks like there's a camera filter on it. I kind of like the idea that when you get up to it, it has like a vestigial eye, and its mouth like droops, and it has different shapes of teeth. Like you're watching evolution clash. And so that is what makes it fuzzy, is that it doesn't have good distinct traits, because the hairs it has are different textures, and some are coily and some are coarse and some are sharp and some are not, right? You get this sense of a kind of botched de-evolution, which leads you to the Enchanted Woods. We need something between Primeval Wood and Monster That Turned Time Backward. Because I think that
we got one more.
Or
Do we have 4 or 5? That we need?
So right now we have the Yggdra at tier 5. We have the devolution creature at tier 4. We have an empty tier 3. We have the enchanted wood at tier 2. And we have the Sasquatch at tier 1.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to bridge that gap. Well, how do you go from... So you chase down the Sasquatch, you kill it. And it has... Okay, right? Let's just do the adventure. The park ranger service has a ranger go missing. There's reports of Sasquatch in the area. You arrive, you investigate, you find it. It leads you to this terrible site. Another person dies while you're there. Eventually you deal with it. You kill the Sasquatch. The Sasquatch has that ranger's bag. You realize through reading the journal that the Sasquatch was the ranger. You move following his journal. It's just got GPS coordinates and you have a satellite phone. You go into the woods and eventually you start to see dragonflies the size of hawks. You start to see ancient palms. The air gets thick and hot. You could almost swear that the sun over your head is too large, and everybody gets the giggles because you're high on oxygen from all of these plants that are like not meant to live in this world. What's the next? What's next? Like, what connects you from that? What is the source of that? So immediately I'm thinking, right, what is the terraforming thing that you encounter? Oh, you're muted?
It's unfortunate because
It's delayed.
There's a 2-minute delay.
Yeah, massive delay. You might want to turn like video camera off and turn back on.
It actually now sounds like he's listening to a ham radio.
breaker. Very delayed.
Actually, it's not delayed. I just can't hear you. Oh, hello, everybody. Wait, let me get down to the corner. Hi, everybody. We're having minor technical difficulty. Hey.
How about now?
There you go.
Perfect.
So my first thought is this is where we encounter our first plant. So we move from the Sasquatch to the Enchanted Forest, and this is where we encounter something that starts to really point us towards Alien Tree. I'm looking at James as outsider. A chat popped up and then went away for me, and so I can't see it. I don't know if they got nervous and deleted it or if I just can't see it anymore. So let's say... So I like the idea, right, of these like recognizable parts. So we go from the Sasquatch to the Enchanted Wood. It's like, whoa. This is not good. Like, this is weird. And then the next thing we encounter is almost a tree at the center of it,
Yeah,
but it's not. It is wrong. It is profoundly incorrect.
Let's make it like a tree that's made out of flesh and muscle.
We're doing a blood tree. Yeah, for sure.
But even more than that, like make its blood blue.
Yeah,
The branches are hands. It's
truly
just
alien.
gross.
Oh yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Like the bark is upon closer inspection, the bark is like fingernail material and has tufts of hair growing out. Like, it's horrible in every way to look at.
Yeah.
But we're in dread. You're like, I can probably
I can
still
cut it
burn
down.
this. I can.
Yeah.
I
It's
can
not gonna
burn
be
this
fun, but
down.
yeah.
Like, we can do it. It's gonna be bad the whole time, but we could, and I still don't need to call the tower. Right?
Yeah.
We're gonna have to you're gonna have to get somebody. Let's use our non-terrestrial threat example, right? Cobb is gonna shut down everything for 5 miles in all directions. Pixie's gonna start wiping the minds of farmers that saw it, and the studs are gonna come in, and there will be a terrible forest fire, and it will burn down a huge patch of land, and we're all gonna pretend like this didn't happen, right?
Mhm.
But if there is a
Sometime in the
tree,
future.
then there was a seed. Where did the seed come from? This is the tower level threat. This is something stranger, something beyond all of those things. I'm getting like walking creature. I'm getting like this, in my mind, I'm imagining this like 25-foot tall, like 50-foot tall, lumbering, what would almost look like a forest god. And so that's how you end up with like cultists who worship it. But upon closer inspection, it is impossible and cannot exist. It should be tall enough to have been seen and photographed thousands of times, but it's never really in our world to be seen. And in those brief moments where it breaches through, it drops seeds that infect the countryside. That's our tower level threat, which is to say a hellfire missile might do something, but the tower's gonna lose people, and anybody near it is already cooked, is already completely done.
They are Sasquatches around
The
it.
tower's launching Hellfire missiles, and they've probably consulted like the Coven to cast ward spells and lockdown concentrations, stuff like that. So it's not just you can shoot it with a big enough gun and it'll die. It's you can shoot it with a big enough gun and with the right knowledge, and you can defeat it. If you don't have those things, you're cooked.
And if
You're not doing it.
go ahead, Michael.
Two things.
Oh no, two things.
I know two things. The code name for this guy is Johnny Appleseed.
I was thinking Johnny Appleseed. It's so good. It's so funny.
And then second, to kind of move on what you said about they had worked with the Coven about warding and stuff.
Mhm.
I think it's a little bit opposite. Just because of language and stuff and how like these guys are almost they're not cryptids or anything like that, but they're on that weird
The tower.
side.
Yeah.
I think they don't communicate with anyone. It's more all of these factions watch and try and figure out what they're about to do and react to what
They
they're
work
doing.
around the movements of the tower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the
true.
idea that Hunt and the Coven coordinate to cover the tower's activities, because the only way that you know that the tower is going to show up is maybe somebody picked up the big red phone and called whatever liaison you have that has found some way to communicate between the two, right? Somebody who lives their entire life in a small cement room they're never allowed to leave. But right, so maybe that was it. But most likely it's somebody at, I don't know, somebody at some signal station is like, there's an unregistered Blackhawk. Huh. And they call it in, and 30 seconds later, somebody from Hunt is on the phone with somebody from the Coven running down a hallway with files under their arm, and the Coven starts to trace sigils to blind people's minds to what they're seeing, and
Yeah.
everybody else just needs to try to isolate what is happening. We now need to look at the myth of Johnny Appleseed and try to find what can kill this thing. I'm immediately thinking like the copper nails you can drive into trees to kill them in folklore, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, possessed by dark spirits that feed on lost hikers, but not the dark spirit. The tree survives by planting seeds in cryptids. Yeah, you get the concept. James gets it.
Perfect.
It's like, oh, it feeds on people. And then you look into it deeper and you're like, well, what does that mean? Wait. But so it comes from somewhere. What do you mean feeds? Like flesh? And it's like, kinda. It's like, hey, I thought I saw it eat someone's soul. What's that about? And somebody from Hunt is like, hey, man, just stop thinking about this. Like,
You don't
what?
want to see it.
Just stop thinking about it. I don't know. It looks bad. Like, just stop.
I'm sure it's terrible.
I'm not going to try to figure it out. That brings you to the Walker, right? Johnny Appleseed. And that takes you to, hey, I saw that thing step out of a terrible rift in reality. What's on the other side of that? And a member of the tower goes, oh, he asked the question. Blink.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what the end of that adventure, right, is you're bringing this thing down. It's injured and starting to stumble, and so it starts to return from wherever it's from, right? You can't even kill it, but you can force it back, and one of your players is on its back, and only they will ever know what is beyond, what the Yggdra is, and why it sends what it sends to this world. They are gone forever.
The idea of saying, all right, everybody, go outside, or like hang up the call, I'll call you back in a bit, and then saying, so, what you find on the other side of the rift is so fun. It's so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's Yggdra. Yggdra is on the other side.
And Yggdra is like, immediately what I imagine when you eventually describe it is, I'm thinking of all things, the Nicolas Cage adaptation of Color Out of Space, which is the thought that there is a color, and that color is part of an organism, and there is a planet somewhere that is entirely encompassed by that thing. The thought that, no, there is a realm beyond the realm that is Yggdra. And you're like, oh, does Yggdra live there and these creatures are there? And it's like, no, Yggdra does not live there. That place is Yggdra. The air, the sky, the ground, the water is that thing. It is all that is there. And given the chance, it will make this it too. That's it. Its goal is not anything. It exists. And if it ever manages to exist in the same space as our world will stop existing and it will be here instead. And you're like, all right, I'm good. I'm gonna check it out. Thank you so much. It's like
Yeah.
great. You also lose 4d12 ignorance immediately. Start rolling.
The first thing I was picturing when you entered the rift was a kaleidoscope of like colors and flesh and bark and leaves all at once that you can't parse, and then you are gone.
The stuff of creation as paint on a canvas. Like,
Yeah.
truly unconnected from what it is meant to be. Yeah, for sure.
It's funny. To add on to all that, Yggdra is almost like a force, and if a DM's good enough, they can talk about how like the force of gravity here. How would you fight? How would you fight that? It just is, or time.
Yeah.
All that.
And the fact that the influence kind of bleeds out a little bit. So, for instance, if I was the seeker for this adventure, and I knew Yggdra was in 9 months at the end of this campaign, we are going to deal with some threat that is directly connected to Yggdra. One of the things I would describe happening in town would be a bunch of dogs have bit people. Right? There is this like slow creep to an alternate reality, like dogs have bit people. By the time we get to the blood tree and your players have been investigating for like in-game time, not like in real time, you've done a couple of time skips and a few side operations, and it's been like 2 or 3 years that they've been investigating this case, I would start describing children being born with like what are strange, somewhere between like a deformity and just incorrect prehensile tail nonsense, right? And then by the time they get to the end, it's like, oh, we have to stop this. Like any little pinprick, that little Sasquatch sighting, there's no such thing as just a little hole in the picture. It always leads to something larger and worse that is sort of behind it. And so that's an example of one of our I think that's pretty solid. Yggdra.
Pretty solid. Guys, can I say I want to counter? We called the DM the Seeker.
Yeah.
I think calling the players Seekers makes more sense because they're seeking knowledge
It's also good with the
and
whole...
they're shrugging off their ignorance,
This is the
like all
nightly-
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're Seekers. I think that works there. Potentially a little bit better.
I still like them being expeditioners, and each thing's an expedition.
They're expeditionaries.
I would need to look up what you would call people on an expedition, because expeditioners is a little busy for sure.
An expedite.
We can talk about. I will be honest. I do like seekers a lot. And if you were to ask me what somebody on an expedition is, eventually the word somebody seeking something would come up in my my thing there. So if they are our seekers, then the question would then be who like tells them where they are going. I'm not sure what that is. The thought that your DM is the questing beast is kind of is a little, the wizard. You show up in a big druid outfit. You're like, I'm Merlin. I think there is something interesting to the kind of weird. I'm really starting to like the. We've been talking a little bit about like occult stuff, and like occult pulp is something that we get really into, and I'm starting to really get the picture of the seekers, and I like that the names of the attributes are so strange, not because they're antiquated, but just because they're weird, because we talked about how losing your ignorance doesn't mean you start turning the lights on and off 3 times every time you leave a room. It's you can't relate to other people anymore because they're not in the same world as you anymore. And so the thought that you start to think of yourself as this grand seeking figure, even as dread starts to consume you, you start to think of yourself as the person that is desperately clinging to hold the dread at bay. And when people speak to you, you're more and more disjointed from them. You're the kind of person to say things like glamour and alacrity who can't be normal and functional in society anymore. Like that ability in you is breaking down, I think is well captured by the kind of silly nature of it all, right? It starts fun and like really enticing and interesting, and it quickly turns into like, oh, your character is really isolating themselves from reality in a way that is getting worse.
It's really cool for like attributes like glamour. Your character gets their attribute of glamour up to like 95, and they're burdened or they're dreadful, so they can't react. They can't look at somebody on the street and connect with them, but they can charm the shit out of them.
Yeah.
Is really cool. It's like, I don't need to know or understand you. I'm going to get my way. Is crazy.
And I like the idea that contacting these things, like we talk about it affecting the plants and the animals, affects you. The thought that a normal person's, the strongest man in the world, Brian Shaw, his strength in Call of Cthulhu would probably be like a 95 or a 99 or something ridiculous. The thought that in this game his strength is 80, and because there is no way to go beyond that without touching things that are bad. Like without, I like your example, somebody with 90 glamour, talking to other people has become like a boring game of chess. You can't do anything other than immediately manipulate them into doing what you want. And as they leave, you're like, I felt nothing just now.
There's
no
another
connection, no like anything. The only people I can connect with are these 4 murder hobos that I went on a
That are equally
Sasquatch
insane.
adventure with. Yeah, exactly. You are just a little tight cluster of people that can only relate to each other, and probably by the end of campaign hate each other a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, Michael, what were you about to say?
Tell me what you guys think of this idea. If you get an attribute to 100, you are labeled a cryptid.
That's so funny. Yeah,
Bare
like
minimum.
your glamour, you're a siren, you know. That's really fun.
Yeah, you're bare minimum. You're in a tower database somewhere. But yeah, I like that idea where getting an attribute to 100 means you can. Let me be clear. You can no longer fail. Even a critical fumble is no longer a failure for you. But you are now one of these things. Like that means you are way outside. If you have 100 might, you don't look like a human anymore. It's over. You don't look like a person anymore. If you have 100 alacrity, you're like one of the Bloodhound Knights from Elden Ring. You have like long arms, and like you occasionally crouch down on all fours just because it's more comfortable for you now. Like you've truly started to wander beyond what is even allowed. Are there people from the tower like that? Does the tower let people get that far? I kind of like the idea that the tower has the equivalent of space marines. They have like creatures that are people that have been on so many missions and have been so altered that they aren't even allowed, when they go back to wherever the tower is, they aren't allowed to talk to the other people. Yeah, they go to whatever is beneath the tower. They are like kept sedated until the next time something happens, and then they give them a shot of wake up juice and they go back out into the field.
They probably allow one of each power.
It's their strike force. Maybe they don't even let them function together. Okay, now hold up. We're doing pulp stuff. If there's one of each, and it was the original knights that are now effectively immortal that encountered the Tower of Babel, and they took on so much stuff throughout that they became immortal creatures that they utilize as a drop strike force, is really cool.
It's extremely cool.
It's a little too...
It's a little too pulp. It's just over the hill for me.
Just over. I was thinking the same.
I'm down that.
Cool,
I think that maybe they're named after that original band of knights would be my middle. Would be like...
You take on the name of... And that is passed on.
As just like a placeholder. Like the Knight of Glamour is Lancelot. And is this thing where it's like... And seeing one of those go down... is the ultimate 5 alarm fire. It's all over. Like if one of those things goes down, you're like, oh, hey, everyone in a mile radius is done for. Because normally, right, we talked about the tower drops. And as long as you don't interact with the tower, you don't like ask questions you're not supposed to act, you might actually be... If all they do is see you running across the street, one of them will point a scanner at you you've never seen before. And they'll just nod to the other one and they'll let you run by. If one of those things has been dropped, no one's allowed to live that was near it. Like, no one's allowed to nearby. Yeah.
And you probably wouldn't anyways. Might 100, they're causing earthquakes. Glamour 100, they speak and you fall unconscious. Like, you're not getting out either way.
We can talk about how hard we want to commit to it, but I love the idea that, like, in the presence of a, like, Glamour 100, I just said like 50 times, in the presence of a Glamour 100 being, immediately make a willpower roll. If you fail, you die.
That's so cool.
Immediately,
now,
if in the presence of a 100 might creature, immediately make a Constitution roll. If you fail, you die. You are immediately killed. You cannot survive being near it. You pass away.
So cool. I wanted to ask this: are you forced attribute increases at any point in this game? Because I could see a character towing the line and being like, I'm going to get to 99, and then I'll just stop. But if there's forced attribute increases, where it's like, you did this thing, and now your attribute increases, now you're 100, your character goes away now. They're taken by the tower, they're killed, whatever.
So, but I think it's like way down the line. I don't think every level up, those things go up. I think most of the time your skills go up, and that's it.
Yeah.
I think when you get to like tier 3... I think it's less that there is any mechanic that does that to you, and it's more that there are creatures that do that to you. So for instance, I think when you get too close to the Yggdra, there are attacks that if they hit you, they make you stronger. It's roll a d6. That attribute goes up by 1d6 and it hurts. And it's very painful when it happens. You also lose that health. Cool. So like gain 5 knowledge, lose 5 HP. And you all watch like the blood vessels in their eyes all pop. A big vein, a new vein, snakes up their head and they collapse unconscious on the ground. And you're like,
yeah.
And that, if we do it like that, there's a really cool argument with your opposing attributes.
Yeah.
This you hit by this goes up 5, that goes down 5.
That goes down. The scale goes that way. And if you're at 95 and it goes up by 5, sorry, big dog, the library's taking you. Or the tower's gonna blow you up.
All right, I'm taking a last couple of notes, and then we're signing off. This was a banger session.
Yeah, very successful. Very successful.
All right, increase as negative effect. Interestingly enough, I'm going to reference an off-camera game. Shout out to our boy. We had a character in one of our games we played Delta Green, and we did an adventure that dealt with Itlashwa and the Wendigos that are under them. And we had a character accidentally complete a ritual to start becoming one, to start turning from a normal person into these like carnivorous beings. And they handled it pretty perfectly in the fiction, which is it made them a lot stronger immediately. And that agent immediately knew that this was their last adventure and that they could never go home. And it was kind of like a perfect bullseye of what that would be like. And I think weirdly has inspired this mechanic probably a little subconsciously in me, is this thought of like, you can do these things and eventually you will gain strength. And I think that's important. I think there's a nasty habit in games like this to really lean on this thought that it's always bad. If it was bad, the cultists wouldn't do it.
Yep.
Cultists wouldn't buy in. They wouldn't, pray to the elder thing. They wouldn't read the scary book. There needs to be pretty huge benefits. And the secrets are one side of that. And I like the idea that this is the other. I don't think the spell to make your might go up is very hard. I think it's pretty easy. It's just that quickly you will start to not look like a person anymore, right? You will start, it's not the same as going to the gym and hitting your protein every week. It's different and worse in a way that I think kind of immediately reflects. All right, I think we're headed in a really exciting direction. I'm excited to see this turn into, we are headed in full system territory. So we'll probably be at this for at least a couple of more sessions. And then Unfortunately, that means probably the startle time between the end of this and this being a sort of playable zine or full system somewhere. It's going to be fairly long, but we'll have to see how that looks like. We're taking pretty rigorous notes. We've already got a couple of little draft things in the background. I'm excited to see how we continue. Next stream, we'll probably keep delving into a couple of these other unknown outside of the Yggdra. I think that would be worth our time. And then after that, it's going to be factions, talking a little bit about like the historical timeline, and then smashing mechanics together. So get ready for a stream of us naming 26 different skills and picking which ones oppose other ones. It's going to be a thrill ride adventure for everybody involved, I'm sure. Thank you all so much for watching. We will catch you on the next one. Peace out.